All right, good evening. It's just a little after 7 on Monday the 19th, and we're going to call the meeting to order. Would you please welcome, join me in a flag salute?
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there any announcements or additions to the agenda?
I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge that it is a federal holiday today. It's not a City of Stayton holiday. Many of you may have had the day off, but I just wanted to acknowledge that it's Juneteenth today, which is a new federal holiday, only a few years old, but it's on June 19th, 1865, enslaved African Americans in Texas were told they were free. And so just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you for everybody that is here on a federal holiday while we do some very important business at the city.
Thank you, Julia. I'm going to take this opportunity to change the agenda item. I'm going to move item number 9 under general business to switch that with number 8. So the first public hearing we'll have tonight is ordinance number 1063 for the code amendments to respond to the homelessness. Everybody okay with that? Okay, thank you. Is there any declarations of ex parte contact, conflict of interest, bias, etc.?
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple to state.
Councilor Sims.
The first one would be for 1063, the amendments for the homelessness. I volunteer at the teen center, first of all. And the second one is I do have a family with property around Riverfront Park.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Councilor Patty.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I've received several community inquiries regarding ordinance number 1063. Several of those community members shared their feelings and thoughts. They shall not bias my decision this evening.
Okay. Councilor
Mr.
Julia,
Mayor.
go ahead.
Yes, I also had contact with community members very interested about this topic, but it will not bias my decision.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I will state that my decision will not be biased.
Thank you. Councilor Ort, anything?
I have had conversations with community members as well. I don't know that that's just declaring like ex parte contact, but I don't think that like as a servant leaders, like shouldn't the community's input affect our decision making?
Yes, agreed. Thank you.
I wanted to point that out because I think that we've said that in the past, but I think there's a distinction between like land use issues and hearing from the public on policy making issues.
Okay.
This is Carrie Connolly. I'm the city attorney for purposes of tonight's meeting, and I just wanted to confirm that is accurate.
Thank you.
That ex parte contacts and conflicts of interest do apply, but bias and ex parte contacts are only in the land use context, which is
awesome.
Not what you're considering this evening. So thanks.
Thanks to Councilor. And one note, Councilor McDonald is excused tonight. He's not feeling well. So with that, next we'll go to appointments.
There are none for you to consider this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, public comment. And before we start with public comment, I'm going to ask if there's anybody on here that is here to speak to something other than the homelessness. If not, we're going to hold these until we actually go to the public comment. Is there anybody that has? Go ahead. Denise, is that yours? Yeah. And this doesn't involve the topic on the agenda. Okay, come on up.
Denise Bush, with 1435 Highland Drive in Stayton. And Julie actually suggested that I come tonight. Didn't realize that this is the audience I was going to have, but it is involving the Teen Center. We just wanted to invite you guys to the annual golf outing and see if you guys would be interested in maybe putting together a team. And just letting you know it was going to happen. It's August 26th, the last Saturday in August. And I've got, since we have such a great group here, I do have business sponsorship information with me and flyers if there's anything that the city can help to advertise.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And Denise, I'm sorry, where would anybody in the audience go if they wanted to sign up for a team for the golf tournament?
I have information here. It's on our website, and or you can call the Teen Center. We make it real easy. Okay.
Great, thank you, Denise. All right, so one last time before non-homelessness comments. Anybody? Okay, thank you. On to the consent agenda. What would the council like to do with the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Councilor Patty?
I motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented this evening.
Second that motion.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries 4-0. Presentations. Are there any presentations, Julia?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is the opportunity now for item number 1063, the code amendment to respond to homelessness. And before we get to this section, I just want to make sure I give you guys a comment here. The public comment is open to 3 minutes of public testimony. It's not an exchange of questions and answers. It's basically an opportunity for you to speak on your mind, let us know what's going on, and then for staff to take notes of that for future. And just I ask that everyone be respectful on the comments and keep it civil, and we'll be all good. With that, I will turn it over to the staff report with Julia.
Thank you. And can you pull up the presentation? So I have a brief presentation to recap for council as well as for the audience, I hope. While they're pulling that up, I also want to acknowledge that Carrie Conley is here from our city attorney's office and will fill in any gaps or jump in if I say anything wrong, which hopefully I won't. I've prepared this presentation in coordination with her. So just wanted to remind you that what's before you is the code amendments to comply with Oregon Revised Statute 195.530. But wanted to start with a little bit of background, maybe. There we go. And then if you can go to the next slide. Just the background is in 2019, there was the Martin v. Boise case, which is a Ninth Circuit Court decision that basically said an ordinance violates the Eighth Amendment if it imposes criminal sanctions against homeless individuals for sleeping outdoors on public property when no alternative shelter is available to them. And it was further, I guess the next step in that was in 2022, Johnson v. Grants, City of Grants Pass was a court decision that applied the Martin decision in the Ninth Circuit Court, but went further and basically said that persons experiencing homelessness are entitled to take necessary minimal measures to keep themselves warm, dry and warm while sleeping outside, and that it's a violation of the Eighth Amendment to punish someone for the mere act of doing that. Oh, I thought it was very close. Okay. I will eat it.
For those in the back.
Okay, sorry about that. And then really what we're here for this evening is in 2022, I believe, the state passed House Bill 3115, which was then codified by ORS 195.530, that essentially codified the Johnson ruling. And the next slide is I'm going to give a little bit more detail on that. It's lots of words, I'm sorry, but I'll read it for you guys as well. Basically, it says, and any city or county law that regulates the acts of sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm and dry outdoors on public property that is open to the public must be objectively reasonable as to time, place, and manner with regards to persons experiencing homelessness. In other words, we can regulate camping on public property, but it must be reasonable such that it's not prohibited everywhere. And it's an affirmative defense to charge a violating city if it's not objectively reasonable. So if we do not amend our code to remove the provision that prohibits camping on all public property, someone can sue us for a violation even if we don't enforce the camping ordinance. And then reasonableness is determined based on the totality of the circumstances, including but not limited to how the impact is experienced by someone experiencing homelessness. A person experiencing homelessness may sue the city or county for injunctive or declaratory relief to challenge the objective reasonableness of a city or county law, and that the court, in its discretion, can award reasonable attorney fees to the plaintiff if the plaintiff provides 90 days notice and the city doesn't do anything about that. So that's what we're dealing with. That's the law that we are trying to come into compliance with so that we do not expose ourselves to undue risk for lawsuit. And that's what we've been working towards. So I wanted to spend a moment on the next slide and just review our existing public property camping limitations. The main one that we're talking about is 8.12.020 regarding camping, that says no person shall camp in or upon any public property or under any bridge unless a permit is obtained from the chief of police or designated representative or by declaration of the mayor in emergency circumstance. And then it has to be filed. There's a process about how it has to be filed. So that's really the main issue, is that it's a blanket statement that you cannot camp anywhere on any public property, and that is in violation of, or that is not compliant with the ORS 195.530. I'm going to go to the next slide. The minimum necessary that we would need to do to comply with the state law is to stop sanctioning camping, sleeping on public property when no alternative exists, and amend city ordinances to remove the language regulating that. Next slide, please. What that would do is allow camping, sleeping, lying, and keeping warm and dry on public property, including potentially parks, rights-of-way, sidewalks, planting strips, other city-owned property. So that's the minimum that we would have to do, but we don't have to do that. We can adopt objectively reasonable measures to time, place, and manner for some public properties. Next slide, please, Tammy. Thank you. So examples of what those objectively reasonable measures would be is prohibiting blocking sidewalks or rights-of-way, prohibiting safety risks, some overnight limitations in some but not all parks, or all parks but not right-of-way, enforcing reasonable time limits for parking. We'll have to have notice. If there was an alternate shelter site, that improves the totality of the circumstances so that we could potentially have more regulations if there were specific alternative sites, managed sites available. Okay, so that's what we had. That's what the council had in front of them. We had several months ago, I think back in November or December, we had a work session and discussed this, and council knew that that was a lot of things to consider, and you formed a task force, and the task force was formed. Next slide, please. It's made up of 14 people representing residents, businesses, as well as someone from the Standing Arm Service Integration Team, Arches, and 2 council members are on the task force. It was understood that due to the time constraints, because this, I don't think I said this, but the ORS 195.530 has to be implemented by July 1 of this year, so in a couple weeks. Because of the time constraints, we knew it was going to be a multi-phase project. We knew that the task force wasn't going to be able to delve in and do all that needed to be done by July 1. We needed to have a lot of public input and outreach. So we went into this in phases. Phase 1 is what we're here talking about tonight, is interim code amendments to comply with the state law. Immediately after this, we'll be moving into phase 2, which is going to be refinement based on extensive feedback, public discussion. We'll have more community events, more public surveys, have more opportunities for the public to comment, and we'll also be able to see how these interim standards are actually working and be able to make changes and tweaks. Next slide, please. So the task force has met monthly since February. They've reviewed case law and Stayton codes to learn where issues and potential noncompliances were. They conducted a survey to get input from residents and held listening sessions to get more in-depth input and conversation. What they heard through those processes was overwhelmingly there was a lack of support for allowing camping in parks. The task force also received a review of city facilities, developed and undeveloped rights-of-way, parks, and other city-owned property. And with that, they made some initial recommendations. They met with council during a joint work session and held an additional meeting just last week where council was invited to discuss the Phase 1 code amendments. So moving into the Phase 1 code amendments. Next slide. Oh, you're way ahead of me. Sorry. Nope, right there. As proposed, before council this evening, the Phase 1 code amendments would amend Municipal Code 8.12 to define developed public parks and public facilities. It amends the section to prohibit camping in developed parks and public facilities subject to certain provisions. And by default, camping would be allowed on any other public property within city boundaries. We're not forming a camp, we're just saying this isn't where you're prohibited from camping, and then there's other places that it continues to be available. Based on the definition, staff has determined a number of places where camping would not be regulated in undeveloped parks, primarily in the area of Riverfront Park and the forested area of Mill Creek, north of Mill Creek Park. There are also several areas of city-owned land that are not within the definition of public facility or developed park. And the next slide, so this next slide shows you the exhibit the exhibit in your packet of developed parks, and if you can see, there's red circled areas. Those are essentially undeveloped areas within existing parks that would potentially be available for camping based on the current proposed regulations or provisions. And next slide, please, Tammy. So I was actually asked, I talked with somebody on the phone this afternoon who wanted to see a little bit more detail of what that would look like. So in the Mill Creek Park area, you can see on the map and the slide, there's a gray circle area. That's the general area that we're talking about in Mill Creek Park. That's on the north side of Mill Creek. But still within the city-owned property. It's not the school district property, the city-owned property of Mill Creek Park. Next slide. This is showing you the approximate area in Riverfront Park where it would be unregulated. That's approximately 200 feet from existing trails and gravel roads. And then I'm going to have you just kind of go quickly, Tammy, through the other city-owned properties. There are some parcels here and there. Those areas, there's about 8 of them. I'm not including, while it is a city-owned property, I'm not including the property that the Moose Lodge is on because it's a developed property that we lease. But the other 8 properties total about 1.23 acres of area. So, yeah, stop there, please. So, what do the amendments mean? On publicly owned land that's not covered under the camping ordinance, camping is not prohibited. It doesn't mean that it's a free-for-all and anybody can do whatever they want. We still have noise regulations, regulations regarding damage, fires, alcohol, rubbish, public urination. There are things that are still in place that would allow us to not allow somebody to establish a permanent camp and just do whatever they want. Next slide. In addition to that, depending on where we ultimately don't prohibit camping, we might have some internal policy discussions on providing some additional sanitation, such as garbage receptacles, porta potties, have some policy discussions on how often a camp needs to be cleaned or how often it needs to be moved to not be an established camp, how often patrol might go into that area for compliance with the regulations. So our recommendation, next slide, is basically the task force recommendation was what's in front of you. We recommend council adopt ordinance 1063 with the understanding that the task force will continue to meet and seek input from everybody involved, the residents of the community, people traveling into the community over the next several months, and that we will continue to respond to issues or concerns as they arise and consider specific policy actions as necessary. Alternatively, I know you have a room full of people. Council can amend the proposed ordinance by modifying the proposed changes in Exhibit 1 in the council packet, and we do have some options prepared for council should you want to see them and discuss them. And with that, that concludes my staff report.
Okay, real quick clarification. You mentioned
Yes.
the riverfront park being 200 feet from any trails. What about the proposal in Mill Creek? How far is that from the teen center?
That is over 400 feet from the teen center to the creek, and then about 1,200 feet, I believe, from the property to the middle school.
Okay. Okay, folks. I'm going to start with Mr. Michael Yeager. If I pronounce your name wrong, please correct me when you come up. Mike, your first. Public comments, 3 minutes, please.
Good evening, Council.
Can you state your address too, please, Mike?
Yes, my name is Michael Jager. I live at 1550 Eagle Street here in Stayton. And I'm here representing the Stayton Roadrunners Club. Stayton Roadrunners, for those of you who don't know, is a nonprofit organization that has been involved here in this community for 40 years. And it's a running club, but we also promote health and fitness in the community, help put on races, and a couple of the projects that we've been significantly involved in over the last 25 plus years. One of them is what we call the Back 40. You guys, I guess, refer to it as Mill City Park, behind the middle school, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's adjacent to, yeah, adjacent to it, yeah.
Okay, and we've maintained, really built those trails behind there and maintained that over the last 25 plus years. And that is a very important accommodation for the community as far as we can see with regards to lots of people back there hiking and walking, and I know the kids use it a lot. We also have races back there that are put on with other schools, and so to mix that with homelessness is quite a concern. I do want to say I very am much empathetic to the homeless. I was involved in leading a Habitat for Humanity here in this community where we built 9 homes over several years in the past, and so it's not that we're insensitive to that, but that we, I think, would see perhaps Riverfront Park as being a much more appropriate place if we were going to need to place the homeless in a location. I know that's one of your considerations, but I have a son that actually as his Eagle Scout project, built the trails behind Riverfront Park there, and just spending a lot of time in that location and the Back 40. There's a lot less people back there in Riverfront. There's a lot more chances of kids being involved with homeless on the Back 40, and it's just not, in my mind, in the Roadrunners' mind, an appropriate place for that, and we just ask the council to give consideration to that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Peterson? Tom Peterson?
I think
Okay, come back. Tony Roush?
Good evening to the council. My name is Tony Roush, and I, along with my family, live adjacent to the Riverfront Park. It's on a personal level. I mean, no one wants the homeless next to their home, but a lot of people use that park, and we see them all the time. one of my big concerns is the chance of fire. I mean, there's going to be drugs, there's going to be smoking, there's going to be people using fire. It gets very dry, and that could just turn into an inferno. So that's one of my big concerns. I know that the council is between a rock and a hard place. I mean, you need something, you need a place to put these people, but they need to be in a place where there's facilities. They need running water. They need sanitary facilities, and sticking just a dumpster and an outhouse that somebody maybe cleans once a week or however is not going to do it. If I don't know if there's buildings available that could be empty buildings that could be leased or rented, or something that's really going to give these people a hand up and not just tuck them away in a park, which will make the parks inhabitable for our community, because people are not going to go down there. They're just not. So I don't have a solution, but I wish that you would look someplace else beside one of our city parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the record, you live at 366 East Water?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I'm Mike Frazzetti.
Yeah, Mike.
I also live at 366 East Water. My concern, among many, is crime. I mean, we're dealing with it right now, where people come in from the park, and I had my truck stolen last summer. Right, it's a fenced property. Somebody came in there and took the truck right out of a fenced piece of property. So I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about services to these people. Are we just going to store them? Are we going to enable these people to be homeless? Anybody see the movie Field of Dreams? Field of Dreams, anybody? Build it and they will come. I mean, it seems to me like if you're going to enable homelessness in this town without providing services, there's some sort of responsibility to the homeless people to take the help that may be offered. I just don't know what we're doing.
Thank you. Jesse Eaton.
My name is Jesse Eden, and I live at 2267 Woodcock Avenue here in Stayton.
Go ahead.
I would propose that that you're doing a fine job, but we can always work a little bit harder. I know time's of the essence, but let's consider the cost of changing, period. You'll do that, and you have done that. You've discussed it. The risk of being sued by all 400 homeless people we have here? 5, 4, whatever, however many is gonna be there. So I will offer an alternative, as was on the slideshow there, and that is that we could simply say no. We don't have to change.
Okay, thank you. Daniel Cadell.
I'm Daniel Cadell. I live on 2115 Nighthawk Avenue here in Stayton. I am strongly against any form of a designated camping spot for the homeless on any of our city property. It's already been said, I think this would enable and encourage more homelessness. I also think this is not something we should be spending money on with our resources here. Our police department, our fire department, our city staff have to clean up. I think the discussion should be just like I just heard, no camping spot whatsoever. We're worried about litigation from the homelessness. What happens when there's a fire and someone's private property goes up? When the back 40 burns? We're prioritizing homeless adults over our children who use these parks, who use these trails. I think it is backwards, the way we're looking at this. It is backwards. No designated camping spot. I appreciate your, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Deb Glander.
Thank you, Council. My name is Deb Glander. I live at 413 North 5th Avenue here in Stayton. A lot of the concerns I have been voiced. I'm concerned about if you build it, they will come. It's going to entice more people to come. I'm concerned about the cost of monitoring and cleaning up, and the fire hazard is a good point. The safety of our children is really important, and the use of the back 40 is something that's been used by the community for years. So the teen center and the back 40. I have experienced homelessness because where I live is off of Marion and Fifth Avenue on the dead end. And I have experienced a homeless person out in front of the street, in front of my house, defecating right in front of me, because there's so many homeless that do go to the park. And I have walked the riverfront park area. I don't feel safe going there now because I see the homeless going back in there, more than 200 feet away from the path. So I still don't see that as a solution either. I have sympathy for the homeless people, but there again, I think our community should come first. So, thank you.
Thank you. Don Sturgeon.
Good evening, Council. My name is Don Sturgeon. I actually do not reside in Stayton. I'm at 5457 Dumore Drive in Amsville. I will parrot a lot of what's been said already, but I'd like to say I can appreciate that this is being mandated to you to stay in compliance with what is now state law, and a solution needs to be reached. I just feel step one in finding a suitable area should be, let's get something as far away from schools and a teen center as possible versus something that's actually contiguous to school grounds and a teen center. It seems like you could not cite a location like this any worse than putting it directly next to the children. Furthermore, this is clearly just a Band-Aid on an issue and something that you're probably even looking at as a temporary solution and not long-term. Clearly, this wouldn't work as a long-term solution to simply say, go head out to that bare patch of dirt over there and set up with no services, no resources, nothing to actually help these people to get back on their feet. And I will say I'm a donor to Union Gospel Mission. I am sympathetic to the cause and the plight of the homeless. This isn't helping anyone, and it's endangering our most sensitive members of our community. First thing you should do when trying to find a site is say, what can we find that's as far away from the school as possible, not right next door? Thank you.
Thank you. Adam Kaiser.
Good evening, Council. You actually did say my name right. Thank you.
Oh, I did? Okay.
Yeah. Most people don't. I'm Adam Kaiser. I reside at 2083 Quail Run Avenue here in Stayton. Just to touch on a couple points that I've noticed, you'd mentioned multiple surveys. I never got one or saw anywhere where that was done, so I have no clue what survey you're referring to. But my daughter goes to the high school and walks home and typically goes to the teen center after school to hang out there, get help with homework and everything else that they do, and she loves going there. That location could be That is one of the worst locations, I think, and I live just a few blocks away, let alone the people live right next door to it. I have a future resident that is 10 years old, would be walking home from the intermediate school there. And if that location does end up being where it's supposed to go, what precautions are we going to be able to take on our side? Like, would my daughter be allowed at the age of 14 to walk around with a little thing of pepper spray to protect herself? It shouldn't have to. By accepting this location or anywhere around the schools, accommodating to the homeless, you're promoting it to increase. It's not going to fix anything. You mentioned accepting undue risk. Is like these homeless camps will always be a huge risk. Adults, I'm a veteran, like so many people else in here, I'm sure. We can defend ourselves, but our kids can't. And we can't always be there to help protect them. So, is risk reduction for this situation even possible? Moving it from here to there, I don't think it's going to fix anything. Who would be the one to monitor the location, wherever that may be, to make sure the homeless aren't wandering through our front yards, digging through our trash, making a mess of our city, and destroying what we try to build and maintain ourselves. Keeping just the schools is my biggest concern. I can protect my family at my house, but when I'm not home, there's nobody there to protect them or to and from. And these homeless people, I've never been homeless, so I can't really say what their situation is, but I have seen the camps all over Salem. I work all over the place, and there's just the drug issue. I see the drug paraphernalia everywhere, and I don't want that anywhere near my daughter. So thank you.
Thank you. Patty Armstrong.
I'm a little nervous, so I'm going to read this. My name is Patty Armstrong. I live in the Phillips edition of Stayton with my husband and my 12-year-old daughter. I am adamantly opposed to any homeless camp near our subdivision. Looking out of my kitchen through my living room window to see a homeless camp is a disturbing thought. I will also support available legal action to prevent this. Our development has suffered through a major drug house a few years ago that caused lots and lots of problems. My home was personally involved with drug people coming through the back from the trailer park, walking beside my home with people, drugged up people looking in my living room window to get to the drug house in our neighborhood. I would expect that to start if this goes through. The homeless drug alcohol conditions is a heartbreaking situation. It's very, very sad, and I have enormous compassion for them, but it's a choice they make. I have personal experience with all addictions. I am the mother of 2 adopted children, both born with alcohol and drug issues from their prior birth parents. My oldest is 53 years old, and I have personally lived with the mental illness and physical violence this addiction has caused her and created in her life. We used to foster drug and alcohol afflicted babies and children. The thought that my child in my neighborhood and nearby school would be exposed to this is something I cannot mentally comprehend and am very angry at the thought. Basically because of my own experience with drug and alcohol issues. It is a serious, serious problem. I agree with what everybody has previously said here. If this is passed, crime is going to increase in our neighborhood and around that school. We're going to walk, or I walk every morning, and I'm going to be walking past needles and paraphernalia and poop and the smell of pee and garbage. Did you know that with drug and alcohol addiction comes violent behavior? I'm going to mention something that nobody else has mentioned, because I've studied drug addiction and I've been involved with it for a long, long time. I have never turned to drugs or alcohol once in my life. But I try and understand it because I like to be a compassionate person. And these babies that are being born drug affected, it's not their fault. Drug addiction comes with violent behavior, physically and sexually. It's a fact, sexually. Sexual addiction is a huge problem with drug addicts. The thought of our neighborhood and school children and people and children in my neighborhood that I love being exposed to some of this just is chilling to me. The sanitary conditions will be a problem. Even if you provide bathroom facilities, drunk and drug people are not going, they're going to cause problems. The value of our homes is going to decline. I'm going to have people knocking on my window and in my garbage, just like that is said. Insurance costs. Please don't do this. You know?
Thank you, Patty. All right, this one I'm going to have to ask who lives at Hummingbird Lane, because I can't really make out the name. Come on up, Matthew.
Sorry, I have Parkinson's.
You're good.
So my name's Matthew Cotner, 1671 Hummingbird Lane. Just want to say thank you for listening to us. So my main concern is I understand you guys have to meet with the state laws, but that doesn't mean you can't make it hard on the homeless. Why not riverfront? Designate a spot, chalk it out, line it out, whatever, and there's only, what, 3 ways into riverfront, right? Make them accountable of who's coming in and out, and that they have to police their own area. Because you can't say we don't have shelter or a spot to camp, but you also can't say, well, you're not going to be able to stay on the city streets or in a public park either. Like, in order to meet the requirements by the state, you have to do one or the other, right? So why not make it difficult for them? Because a little background with myself, I'm a veteran, as almost every gentleman on this right I know is, and some on the left. That's why they're on the right. Right? We understand and we know. I'm a veteran with PTSD, suicidal. I've been homeless, and I can tell you that news of a shelter or a place or a camp that somebody can go is going to spread like wildfire, and not just in our community, to other communities, and they will migrate here. It's like small town news or gossip. Once one person knows, everybody knows. So why not limit what they can do as far as public parks closed between 10 p.m. and 6 p.m.? Why can they not only be allowed in that area during that time? Your circle with Mill City, that's not even a designated spot. My wife and I walk there with our dogs. There are trails there. They have to be, by your regulation, 200 feet away. There's trails at Mill City. There's trails at the back 40. There is no way that you can get into the Mill City area without passing the teen center or the middle school. There is no road access on any other side. So I'm pretty sure, and I will do more research and I will be at more meetings, there are city ordinances and laws that people with a criminal background or drug addiction or whatever cannot be within minors within a certain distance. I'm pretty sure they have to walk past the teen center to even get to that campsite at Mill City. And that would not meet for regulations or the statutes that are made right now. I don't know who our city attorney is, but that might be something that we want to look into, because they cannot go past any of that without going past minors. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Trevor Fossmark.
Hi, I'm Trevor Fosmark, 42058 Kingston Lions Drive. I just decided to speak tonight. I got a different view on this. I don't know how many of you guys have been into homeless camps, but let me just explain to you what that looks like. I'm a firefighter for a fairly large city that's pretty close to here. We deal with a horrible homeless population, and over the last, I'll just use the last month as an example. A woman delivered 2 babies. One was dead. We're doing CPR on it. The other one, she's saying, just get this thing out of me. I don't want it. We've had multiple fires. It's on a daily basis where we just run drug calls. We give Narcan out like crazy. The last baby that was born in this city on the other side of the river was born in a bucket of feces because they would burn down all of the porta potties that were given to them. So that city got rid of the porta potties because they just kept burning them down, gave them buckets. Somebody had a baby in a bucket full of poop. So these camps are disgusting. We don't want them here. They're riddled with drugs. I've been verbally assaulted. We get physically assaulted when we run calls in there. Our call volume in this city has gone up. I can't tell you how many hundreds of calls it's gone up because of homelessness. This city is not ready for what you guys are going to experience if we allow this to come here. We are not prepared for this. I'll just leave it at that. We don't want them here. I say no. Yeah, I mean, I just look at it a little different because I have to go on these calls, and it's disgusting. So that's it.
Thanks. All right, Justin, I apologize, but I can't really make out your last name. Justin lives in Old Mahama? Yeah. There you go.
Justin Aganaga, 18433 Old Mahama Road. I've been around the world. I've seen the slums of the world. We don't want it here. I'm sure you guys don't want it here. It's something you're getting jammed down your throats by the state. I'm just thinking outside the box. How can we fight it? We don't have the resources for them. We don't have the money for them. Yes, I live outside the city, so you guys don't have the money for it, whatever. Is there a way we can fight the state on this? Of we don't have the resources, we don't have, if we put the port, said 1,000 times, build it, they will come. And just, what can we do to protect ourselves? Thinking long term here. People need help. People need resources. We don't have them. And so, end of the day, is it so bad to give them a bus ticket back to Salem? Like,
All right, Joan Willis.
Hello. Do I need to introduce myself?
Sure.
Okay.
You just state your address, please.
My address is 622 North 3rd Avenue, Stayton. I am a mom, and I have 6 kids, and I just think public spaces are for the public, and that means people of all ages and abilities. Women and children should not feel unsafe in public spaces. And if someone is making public spaces unsafe, they need to be removed from those spaces. It's important for humans to be able to go outside and be in nature. And I do use Riverfront Park. I go walking there with my kids. And, sorry. And it's important to keep those natural parks for people in Stayton to get out in, no matter what their socioeconomic status. And many people in the homeless camp suffer from addiction and mental illness, or both, and they need help, but allowing them to camp there doesn't help them, and it does take it away from all the other citizens. Sorry. And the services for them are available in Salem, and so if we actually want to help them, we can maybe provide transportation to Salem, but honestly, we can't really do anything to help them unless they don't want to live like that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Peterson, have you changed your mind? You good to go? Tom?
I'm Tom Peterson. I live at 2190 Cardinal Avenue, Stayton, Oregon. Pretty much everything that's been said has been said already. The only problem that I see is we just got rid of a drug house right behind my house. It took us 3 years. We had prostitution, we had crime, we had everything going. There's only one way going into there and one way coming out, and you want to put a homeless camp behind a school? And no, there's 360 ways they can get out. I think it's a bad idea. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Willis.
Mayor Quigley, councilors, my name is Cullum Willis, and I live at 622 North 3rd Avenue. And I was listening to the overview, and I might have missed it, but I think there might be an assumption that that's not in the statute or the cases cited. There's no requirement for a city to designate a place for homeless camping. That's not in the statute, nor is it in the cases. And so I don't think you have to do that to comply with the law. You've heard all the reasons why it's a bad idea. What we've seen in Salem is every time that one of the cities allowed these camps, whether it's the Marion Street Bridge under the park there, or Wallace Marine Park or Cascade Gateway Park, it always affects outside the designated area with all the stuff you've heard about. So there's no question that if the city designates these campsites, it will affect the rest of us. And you heard my wife, we do walk our kids in River Park, and just yesterday for Father's Day, we were in the back 40 walking through the woods. So my recommendation would be, the court basically just, the statute just says it has to be reasonable as a time, place, and manner. The court just says basically you can't prohibit somebody, I believe what they said is from taking the rudimentary precautions to protect themselves when sleeping in public. And so I think you can address that just by revising the definition of campsite. If you just revise how you say campsite, I think you can get there, because the court even says that, in the Johnson case, the Grants Pass case, the court says that the city was not required to provide shelter for the homeless. It could still limit camping or sleeping in certain times in certain places. And it even kind of speaks with approval that the city may still ban the use of tents in public parks. So I think you have a lot of tools at your disposal. My recommendation to meet the July 1st timeline is just to revise the definition of campsite to make sure that it's not using the offending language that the Ninth Circuit found in the Grants Pass case. That'll buy you the time you need, but I would ask you to please, please, please protect all of our parks. Don't cite any designated places, or even say we're not going to enforce a ban against camping in a park. You have to protect our parks, otherwise we'll lose them, and we'll lose them for a very long time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that was the end of all of you who submitted green sheets. Anybody else? One more time before council moves on. Okay, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your contribution. I think it means a lot to the community, so thank you. With that, we will move on to council discussion. So, council? Councilor Patty, looks like you have something to say.
Yeah, I sure do. So first of all, actually looking at ORS 195.530, this is the non-camping use of public property by homeless individuals, attorney fees, et cetera. This is the reason we're here tonight, right? And I just want to remind you all, this was something passed out of the Oregon legislature, and elections have consequences, right? So here we are sitting in our consequence. And so the other thing in this law that I don't think has been mentioned yet, but we'll just talk about it briefly, is that at least 90 days before any action was filed, that's a legal lawsuit that we're talking about here, we must be provided written notice to the governing body, that's all of us, of the city or county that enacted the law being challenged, of an intent to bring this action, and the notice provided the governing body with actual notice of the basis upon which the plaintiff intends to challenge the law. So basically that says we're going to get a 3-month warning if we're going to get sued here. So given that, I have kind of made a decision as far as where I want to go with the motion on this. And I'm not sure if the rest of the council's with me, but I just want to go ahead and inform you all on that. My motion will ultimately exclude some of those designated locations as being, permitted for camping. So that's what my motion is that I'm prepared to make tonight. I'm going to let the other councilors weigh in here based on what they've heard tonight, and yeah, go from there.
Councilor Sims.
So I have a couple things to say about this. We had a survey that was sent out with one of the water bills, and it was overwhelmingly that we did not want camping in our parks. I think that was pretty well stated, and that's where the survey was. That there's a letter that goes out with your water bill, and there's a website. I did the link and did the survey myself. Secondly, our Exhibit A for our Chapter 8.12, which has a map of, first of all, Mill Creek Park. So they're 400 feet from the teen center. I have a pretty serious issue with Mill Creek Park. I just can't do that. And then secondly, for Riverfront Park, there's the wildfire issue is a serious issue for me. There's gonna be a fire there. I know there will. I mean, the police are gonna come down there and check it and tell the homeless camps to, put out the fire. But as soon as they leave, they have nothing to lose. They're going to start another fire up to stay warm, and it's just the natural order. It's human nature. That's what's going to happen. And that area gets so dry down there during the summer. Those cottonwoods and the grass down there is going to catch on fire, and it's difficult to get down there. There's not a lot of access. It's going to be tough for the police, the fire department to get down there. So I think that's another really serious issue. And lastly, my thoughts are, the parks are for the taxpayers. You're paying the taxes on your property taxes. Those parks are for the citizens of Stayton. And I feel wrong taking away those areas from the citizens. I think we really have to look at a different area, a different Exhibit A with a different map, because I know there's some areas out in the industrial area. We can't have it in a neighborhood, can't have it around people's houses, because I don't want it around my house. So I really think we have to look at the industrial area of town for sites that we can designate, because I do think, according to the law, we're going to have to designate somewhere in this city that's public that camping can be allowed.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Yeah, I think after just the testimony that was presented tonight, and I do want to say thank you all for showing up and for coming. I think I'm reminded as to, I think this is just the reality, but our jobs is to assume risk on behalf of the public, right? The people that elected us. So we're public servants, and our first priority is to the people that elect us. And I think it was loudly spoken, clearly spoken, without any like ifs, ands, or buts, that we need to say no as firmly as we possibly can. I think that the suggestion that was brought by Commissioner Willis is probably the best option. Also knowing that Dallas, the city of Dallas and the city of Monmouth have both taken kind of the approach that was alluded to by you, Councilor Patty, in that I think because of the 90-day like warning you basically get on any potential litigation, they have both chosen to not change their statutes at this time. I think they're still just waiting, going through that process. I don't think it means that they won't ever change them, but I would much rather be how can we find something that's workable, that makes it very difficult to be homeless in this community, to be houseless in this community, while still doing what we can to stay within the law. I just think that right now we're taking kind of a zero risk. I think this proposal is like zero risk, right? So this is like, we know that if we go and we say there's these things of property that's available, we know it's basically a zero risk for the city. I don't think we can get to zero risk, but I think there might be some creative things that we can do to de-incentivize homelessness while still keeping this camping prohibition at our parks and beginning to enforce it more. So that would be where I'm at on this discussion.
Thank you. Councilor Ort, anything to weigh in on?
Yes, I have a couple things. And listening to, the public, thank you for coming. All of you, I can't see you, but thank you for being there. We just passed a levy recently where, we asked our citizens to pay more money on their property taxes every year to fund our parks. And thinking about this, we're taking a section, possibly not even a section, but these areas where people take their kids. We know that there's kids present behind the middle school, the walking trails, the teen center and whatnot, where our children are, and possibly making them unusable. So if in the future and we do need those levies, I just want to say that we do need those levies to keep our parks running. But if we want to have the public buy-in for those things, then we absolutely need to make sure that those places are accessible and safe for our community. And so I'm not in favor of certainly the section in the Mill Creek area. I'm not in favor of that. I was kind of on the fence about the riverfront property, but my concerns also lie in if we have an established area, people will use that. And then if we have to provide resources for that area, it will just make it more accessible. And then there's one group of people using those facilities that other people are not going to be using. They could use them, but no one's going to use those. So I'm not really in favor of that either. I think that I like the approach of changing leaving our parks, that you can't camp in the parks. Because on one of the previous slides, it says that we could say, no, you can camp in some, but not all areas. Well, just because they can't be in the public parks, or anyone can't be in the public parks, doesn't mean that you can't camp in other areas. And I would agree that we need to make it as difficult as possible to camp if need be. I am a firm believer that it's not compassionate to let people wallow in places like one of the gentlemen mentioned of those camps. That's not compassionate, that's not caring. To let people, to say that's okay for people to live like that. I would be in favor of not having, oh my gosh, let me go back. Okay, so keeping our parks established rule where you can't be in the park from the 10 to 6 a.m. and then changing what camping is. so that, they can camp on public property, which possibly means sidewalks, but then you also, like Julia mentioned, we also have the option of policing those areas, and they still have to abide by the other ordinances that we have in place.
Okay, thank you. All right, with that, Councilor Patty?
Yeah, real quick. Councilor Ward, can you expand on that proposal a little bit more? As towards the end, you were kind of explaining, it sounded like you were talking about a mix of regulations for public rights-of-ways and parks. Could you just elaborate a little bit more on that so I understand it and whether or not it's going to be workable with the motion I'm about to make here?
Okay. So I don't know what the motion you're about to make is, but we have been kind of focused, our focus has been on not allowing camping in parks and establishing what those are. And so instead of that, maybe we need to focus on what the definition of camping is. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, either Carrie or Julia, but camping is like, we can't not let someone sleep in a sleeping bag. We are allowed to say you can't erect a tent, but we can't say you can't sleep on a sidewalk, let's say, or in a right-of-way. So my suggestion is to keep our parks, all of them, to where you're not, sundown, sunup rules for everyone, and then change the definition of camping, and take out this, I believe there's a specific portion of it that says that you can't have like bedding material. So if we take that out, from my understanding of what Commissioner Willis was saying, is that that's the portion that the court has an issue with. Carrie?
Thanks. So there's a lot of ways you guys are tasked with a tough job, admittedly. There's a lot of ways we could move around your code and mess with it. We are looking at a really short timeline in order to have something that's legally defensible between now and July 1st. Currently, your code prohibits it's all camping on all public property. So the goal was to change that. That is the per se violation of the Grants Pass and Boise case law. So what we were wanting to do, and what we still can do, hopefully tonight, is to change that public property to something else. What we have right now is developed parks. I am not in favor of messing around with the definition of camping, because there's a different way to achieve what I think you're after without going down that road and waving a lot of red flags and taking a lot of time to try to craft something that suits all of you plus the community. I think Julia actually has some proposals that before any motion is made, I would love for you to take a look at, because I believe that they address the public comment that was received tonight to a great extent, the counselors' concerns that I'm hearing right now, and could be prepared and ready for adoption tonight if people are interested in that. So I too am not privy to the motion that is being considered, but and Julie, I don't want to, step on your toes or anything like that, but if this is an appropriate time to share alternatives that have been vetted with legal, and I think could be legally defensible based on the public property that's available and would remain open to camping, I would propose to go a slightly different way than messing with your definition of camping.
Sure, and I think that the motion might have been substantially similar to what you and I had talked about. So I don't know, Councilor Patty, if you want to, if you want me to explain kind of my.
Yeah, go ahead and get the staff summary on that.
Okay, so first of all, I agree. Getting into into definitions is sort of opening up a whole can of worms in conversation that I don't know that we're fully prepared to to do this evening. That said, as I said earlier, the task force is going to continue to meet. They're going to continue to get a lot of public input, hopefully a lot more after tonight, and tweak this over the rest of the year. My recommendation based on, or some options, I guess, based on what I have heard that council was hearing from the community over the past week, was two options. One, you can amend the definition of developed park to basically just say Mill Creek Park and not say that portion of Mill Creek Park north of. So that's one option. In that option, you would
clarify exactly what that does. So that extends the camping prohibition through all of Mill Creek Park, just so that councilors and the members of the public understand what that minor tweak accomplishes.
Yes, so what that would mean is that all of Mill Creek Park is a developed park per the proposed definitions, and camping is prohibited in all developed parks. What that would mean is that there would be about 5 acres of other property throughout the city that would be available, and we believe that it would be well in compliance with the need to accommodate the low number of homeless people that we have in our community. Another option, if you see fit, would be to amend the definition of developed park even further to say that all of Mill Creek Park is a developed park and all of Riverfront Park is a developed park. Essentially, you would be saying all of our parks are developed parks, and you may not camp in any developed park. There would still be some city-owned property that is not right-of-way, that is not park, that would potentially be available for people to camp, thereby meeting the law that we have to adhere to. We believe that there would be sufficient space for the low number of people that we have in the community based on the acreage that is available on those other city-owned properties. So that would be two options that council could take if you want to do that this evening. And I believe that Councilor Patty does have some specific verbiage to do that, depending on which option, if either you want to take.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Giulio.
Yeah, I've been considering this alternative today as this was something that was brought up to me earlier today. And the issue that I have with it is because it's a similar issue to, I think, what happened kind of tonight, is that I don't think there's really been the time to consider I think there's been this assumption kind of made the whole time. So it's like we put out a survey that says the public doesn't want these camps on public parks. So we say, okay, well, we got to find a solution to that. Where can they go, right? And so we're trying to figure out, okay, where are people least likely to have concerns around this? And so then we designate these two areas, but then there is a lot of public concern around those two areas. And so now we're kind of rushing into another situation of, hey, there's these 4 or 5 or 6 other properties that also I don't think have been vetted by the public. And what I would really like to see is to say, okay, Dallas and Monmouth have taken this, like, let's not change anything right now. And I would like to see 3 proposals that we're actually able to get like a survey around, and some options of what's workable before we launch into, I think, really not preventing it, because I mean some of these other properties are fairly close to residential areas. I was looking through them again today, and it's there's not a lot of great options. There's a couple maybe undeveloped right-of-ways that are a little bit more out in the industrial district. But I think we're just running into the same issue of, if we say there's like 2 or 3 places that people can go, you're de facto creating a camp, a place where they can stay. I think creating time, and this is something we considered a little earlier, but I don't think went very far, but I would like to take another look at this, is even time-based restrictions to say you can be here 24 hours. That at least keeps people moving and starts to de-incentivize like long-term camping. Those are the things that I would look at. So I would say on these specific motions, outside of adjusting the definition tonight, I am a no, and I think that the public has spoken really pretty clearly that I think they are also a no. And I want to get to something where, is yes, meeting the law somehow, but also something that I think has had more time, and I think the public is fully engaged now in this conversation, to have a little bit more. So I'm ready to assume that risk as the city, but I do know that, my fellow councilors are thinking.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Councilor Patty?
Yeah, no, I'm sympathetic to that point, that this kind of seems like this is a hasty solution to our issue, right? That's fair. But what I will say, and I'll return to my original point, is that we got 90 days to address any kind of legal challenge through code amendments. And so with this decision, I'm in support of protecting our parks today. And so what that means is expanding this definition to include those 2 parks that have been identified as being prohibited in. And so I know there's a number of acreage outside of our parks that's available to this homeless community. For me, I would like to see this issue play out, what that looks like as far as implementation of this code amendment, and then turn around and address this if there are problematic areas throughout town where homeless are congregating or causing some of these issues that cannot be addressed with the current code on books. So that's kind of where I'm sitting on this issue, and that's the motion I'm prepared to make. And so I think maybe it might be a good idea just to make the motion at this point and deliberate, if everybody's in favor of that. All right, cool. So at this point, I would like to motion that we approve ordinance number 1063 with the following modification: that we amend Exhibit 1, 8.12.020.4 to read, the following areas are considered developed parks for the purposes of this chapter: Pioneer Park, Santiam Park, North Slope Park, Quail Run Park, Henry A. Porter Dog Park, Westtown Park, Community Garden, Community Center Park, Riverfront Park, and Mill Creek Park.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to modify the ordinance as Councilor Patty recommended. I don't know. I didn't write it all down, so. Further discussion?
If that is something that a majority of the council is interested in, I would just want to clarify that Exhibit A would no longer be needed. That would fall out. And the revised Exhibit B would go back to Exhibit A, just to be really clear about the ordinance that's in front of you and the changes that would be made to accommodate that change. Okay. Can I also speak to the other option of just the wait and see and not doing anything, which leaves law enforcement without any code provisions that they can enforce? That leaves you in your status quo. You have an unconstitutional provision on your books, and law enforcement can't do anything on any public property. So the motion that is before you at least allows law enforcement some certainty and allows them to issue citations and enforce the code as amended as to camping in parks and park closures at night.
And I'll echo that. In talking with the city managers of the city of Monmouth and Dallas, they did say that they are not, and based on their legal advice, which I'd love you to, Carrie, to talk to their attorney and understand, but that they weren't feeling like they had to do this by July 1, but they still were not enforcing their code provisions. So they do have provisions on the book for prohibiting camping in parks, and they are not enforcing it. So yeah, I agree that the wait and see approach doesn't make it any better, because our police officers would not be able to enforce the camping in parks, whereas if a code was amended, then they would be able to do that.
So it'd be a continuation of what's happening today. They're not enforcing it today.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Sims.
Dan brought something up to me. I missed it when Councilor Patty was speaking, but I believe you left out Wildlife Meadows Park.
Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to amend my motion to include Wildlife Meadows Park.
Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to amend my motion to include Wildlife Meadows Park with the amendment for number 1063, ordinance number 1063.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. No further discussion from council? Council Ort.
What does enforcement look like? Because for all intents and purposes, I just feel like the only people at this point that are actually that actually have to live by any of the rules that we have in place are the tax-paying citizens, and not where do the homeless people in our community have any sort of personal responsibility, and what is the repercussions if they don't follow the rules? They get trespassed for 30 days, and then what happens? Then they get to go back and do it again? Like what? There's no real repercussions. So whether the law is enforceable now or it's not enforceable, like what's the difference, to be completely honest?
Do you want me to try? I can try to answer that, and then I might call Sergeant Meeks up and Carrie. I think the difference is right now we are not enforcing camping in parks. So they are only enforcing the other issues that are occurring as they become aware of them. If you adopt the ordinance, they will be able to get people out of parks that are camping overnight. They will be able to enforce the no camping in the parks. There may be other locations that there are issues, and they will have to follow through on those issues. As far as excluding from parks and things like that, I think that will be alleviated to a certain extent. Carrie or Sergeant Meeks, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that.
I would defer to your law enforcement, and so I would love to hear from Sergeant Meeks. I don't know what's going on the ground. What I've been told is that there are no citations being issued for violation of the no camping code provision as it's written, and that there could be citations issued if it was amended. I know, I can tell you, it could be enforced, and I assume your law enforcement would enforce it if amended.
So I guess then my question is for the police department is, if we make this amendment, is it going to be enforced? Because at the moment there are several ordinances on our books that we are not enforcing either. So how do we pick and choose what are we enforcing and what are we not?
So what I can speak to is we've been working with Martin v. Boise for a while now, for several years. And when we find someone camping in the park, there's really nothing we can do. We can't, if we cited them, it wouldn't be upheld. It would just be thrown out of court. So as it stands right now, I think the big misconception is that not to allow people to camp here, that if this resolution passes, then people can't camp here. But that's not true. Right now, anyone, any of the homeless people can camp anywhere. If they wanted to camp right there, which they have quite a bit, they could. Whereas if 1063 were to pass, we could enforce, hey, look, you can't be on the city property. We do have a place for you to go. Whereas right now, under Martin versus Boise, if there's no alternative place to go, they can be in any of our camps. They could be in Quail Run, or any of our parks. They could be in Quail Run Park. They could be in Pioneer Park. They can sleep on the bridge, which has happened for a long time. And we could not enforce that. Literally sleeping on the bridge that represents our city, and we were not able to enforce that. So if we at least find a place for them to go, that's the best of all the worst alternatives, then it's something that we could enforce. And I can say I would work on enforcing the camping, and you couldn't be on the bridge, you couldn't be here, you couldn't be at the parks. The other thing I would speak to is right now with the fire issues, I think that is a big issue. But right now, having a designated place for them to be where it's not prohibited wouldn't increase that. It would somewhat decrease it, where right now they could be anywhere in Riverfront Park and hiding. And so that'd be my opinion, that that yes, it's not great, and there is a fire risk, but by passing this ordinance wouldn't make it any worse. In my opinion, it would still make it better. So I hope I answered your questions, and if you have anything else.
Can you speak to how, so, and I think the issue is that camping in and of itself isn't a violation, so you can't cite people, and you don't, because they can be anywhere, it's hard to find violations sometimes. I assume you would still be able to enforce and would enforce other things that you are aware of, such as people doing fires, having excessive rubbish, those types of things, on the properties that are remaining unprohibited. You would be able to enforce it better because it's less everywhere. Is that correct?
Yes, we'd know where they were, and we'd be able to go there. I don't know the frequency, but more often. Where right now it's hard to enforce that because they could be anywhere in Riverfront Park, and they are. But yeah, they could be there for, they become established, and then it makes it really hard to clean up. And I know that there are concerns about it turning into what other places have turned into, and I know at least if we designate a place where it's not prohibited, that it would still make it easier to enforce. It's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be great, but right now, like I say, they could be anywhere in any of the parks. And that is difficult for us to patrol and to find them.
Councilor Ort.
Carrie, can we go back to the suggestion of a campsite and why you have concerns about removing the language of bedding and sleeping bags, because those are the things that the rulings are saying, is that you can't allow somebody to have bedding or sleeping materials, but we can prohibit stoves and fires and like temporary structures and things like that. So why can't we just take that out and then also say, oh, and you can't camp in parks? So, or that we can't, why can't we do that? What's the problem?
Well, under the current proposal, you're going to say no camping in parks. What we're concerned about isn't only the bedding. What we need to be able to say is there are public locations that are open to the public throughout the city, where individuals can sit, lie, sleep, and keep warm and dry. So the keep warm and dry is the piece that everybody is focusing on in the definition of camp. But remember, sit, lie, sleep. You got to be able to allow those things too. So if it doesn't make sense to me to try to target or allow them to have bedding if you're not allowing them to sit, lie, and sleep. And so I'm like, let's just have it part and parcel, at least in this moment when I haven't had a chance to analyze various different kinds of definitions and what that would do to your prohibition. What I'm hearing is the goal is the public doesn't want any kind of camping in your public parks. I'm not hearing a sentiment amongst the council that says we would like to allow some kind of camping in our public parks. What I am hearing is that the recognition that if we limit our parks and take those off, if those are off limits for camping, where else is there so that we can meet the intent of Martin v. Boise and 195530? And staff has done a commendable job of saying, actually, we're trying to respond to public sentiment and council sentiment. We know you want to protect your parks, and we think that that's defensible because there is other public property, including rights-of-ways and the parcels that were raised. We're not designating a campsite. I just want to come back to that. Please, we are not designating a campsite. You are not to that point yet. You are not ready to take on managed or unmanaged camping in your city. But what we have identified are locations where camping would be allowed under these code amendments. And then how you want to treat that, or work on that moving forward is what the task force will be continuing to focus on. This is not the end of the story.
Makes sense.
I think thank you for that. I think my concern, and this has been something I've been mulling over since 2 task forces ago when I was able to be there, is that I know we're not designating a spot but by saying you can't be in these areas, then essentially we are saying, okay, you can be in those areas. So those happen to be like right behind people's houses, right next to other people's houses. It's just, and it still allows them to have these places that don't have resources, that don't have facilities, so they're gonna leave trash, human excrement, which is a biohazard. And then also we talked about, okay, over by the industrial area or over by, businesses. And I am a small business owner. I own several businesses, including one downtown, and downtown areas get hit a lot by homeless people. And to say that, okay, we're not going to put them by, we don't want them by houses, we don't want them by kids, I totally get that. But you also don't want them by your businesses either, because a thriving community, your business community creates the thriving community around it. So I don't know, I don't necessarily see that as an option either. You put them over in the industrial park, you're going to have theft. And maybe people see that just as property, but that's someone's livelihood, that's someone's money, that's money that you can't use to employ people when someone steals your stuff. So I don't really see that as a...
So, but I'm not hearing, as a policymaker, all of you are charged with figuring out what public property won't be rented, what will be open for camping. And that's a tough one, but so if you want to take, I'm fine with protecting any portions of the city as long as there's a balance of a location that is reasonable, or locations preferably so there's not an increased density of unhoused population, which exacerbates all the problems that we're hearing about tonight. So my goal is to help you find locations that are reasonable throughout the city that accommodate the current population and fluctuations that can be anticipated in that population. But I'm not familiar with your on the ground circumstances. I know staff has worked really hard to identify for you all of the public property, and then you get to decide, do we want to leave it all open? That's the current status. You could do that. Do we want to protect certain areas and then evaluate of those remaining areas what are reasonable? So I'm sorry if that doesn't help you at all, but I get the frustration, and all I can tell you is that there must be place. There is no buying a bus ticket and taking everybody out of the city. We can't say this city is closed. We're looking at the full community, not just what everybody is identifying as the taxpayers. We're looking at everyone in the community, and we need to make sure the public space is used in accordance with the law and the Constitution. You've got a pretty good compromise in front of you. My mom always said, you can't please all the people all the time. You can't please some of the people all the time, But if there's some end of it. If you please some of the people some of the time, you've probably made a pretty good law.
And I would say that based on the discussion about amending the campsite, that doesn't get at the prohibition. It would allow people to camp, to have sleeping bags or sleep in all the places that people are concerned about. And so continuing forward with the proposal with the prohibition, again, knowing that This is not the only bite at the apple. There will be more conversation, and we will potentially go into more depth in that concept. We might do a multiple variety of things, but just amending the definition doesn't get at what I think we were hearing from the community about prohibiting it in parks.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Yeah, so as I'm trying to think through exactly how you would do it, if you went the definition route, it seems like what you would do is you would amend the campsite definition to say any place where any stove or fire is placed, established, or maintained for the purpose of maintaining a temporary place to stay, whether or not such a place incorporates the use of any tent, lean-to, shack, or any other structure, or any vehicle or part thereof. I think it would include, you would include things like tents, structures. There's no, I think what was trying to get at is that in the case law, there doesn't appear to be direct references to camping, that you can't prohibit camping, but you can't prohibit lying or sitting, which this provision does not do. This provision doesn't talk about lying or sitting, sit-lie ordinances. It just says that if you open that up a little bit to say someone can have a sleeping bag, someone can have bedding, you're still able to cut off the parks from camping, and because you already have, you can still close the parks, you can still keep developed parks in the city from being in the time, place, and manner restriction from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. So if you're saying, okay, that no camping is allowed, but you don't include in that definition bedding, sleeping bag, other materials, but then you're only applying the park hours to parks, there still would be other places in the city that someone could theoretically go to. But what you're doing is you're not just saying go here, go here, go here. And I think for the purposes of this deadline, I think it seems like that would be far enough. And I know that I'm not a lawyer, but I do know that there are other, I mean, it's not just one uniform position on this. And I was reading through the laws, the decisions in the law this morning, and the law, it said just, I mean, it's so vague. It just says objectively reasonable, without any like definition about what that means. Really, in the law, it's a very short law, and it doesn't really provide very much. So if we're able to make that case, that at least for now we have tweaked it to not make it illegal to lie, sit, or have bedding, right? The stuff that you would need to sleep, but you're keeping the park hours in place. I think that you have an argument to say we've made some tweaks for this July 1st deadline. If we get a 90-day notice of litigation, right, we can obviously tweak more, but we also just continue the task force process to try to find a couple other solutions to see where we're at. I think that that gets at thing. I don't think I'm able to acknowledge someone who has their hand up, but I don't know if we can, if there's a way to do that. I'm sorry about that.
We're not allowed to comment any further.
I think that the public comment period has closed. I think according.
How do we rebuttal what you guys are discussing now?
So we're in deliberation with a motion on the table and a second.
Yeah, we're.
Do you have public opinions about those?
That's during public. There'll be another chance at the end of the meeting, the overall meeting, for one more time for public comment.
Pass the motion now, so it affects me coming back and making a
Yeah.
comment about it.
And the council deliberations now, so we can't take any comment at the moment. So let them continue. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, getting at that point, I do think this is not this proposal, the alternative to the proposal. I think making those tweaks gives us some time, and then it allows us to be able to vet this other proposal, this other amendment proposal with public input, and being able to incorporate them more fully into the process. So that's why I think we should take that route.
Councilor Ort.
I know we're talking about this specific motion. But Councilor Giglio, just to confirm what you're saying, are you kind of thinking what I'm thinking of changing, like striking out that bedding, sleeping bag language or other material, and then keeping our parks, because from the 10, but essentially what, are you in agreement with that what I said too?
Yes, yeah, I would say that
Basically,
camping.
because that protects the parks. You still can't camp. We're gonna change what camping is, so people could still have a sleeping bag on the sidewalk, but it can't cover the whole sidewalk during business hours, because that's not ADA compliant. So that's what Portland's getting in trouble for. So you'd have to move sleeping bags out of the way so you wouldn't obstruct walking and everything, but it would make sure that essentially no one is allowed in the park because we allow camping in other areas.
It does open up, if I'm being fair, it does feel like it opens up the possibility of someone during the daytime, like having a sleeping bag at a park, right? So that would be the downside, because you're saying.
I have a house to go to. I can have a sleeping bag at the park.
Right.
During the day.
Right. Everyone can have a sleeping bag or bedding, or a picnic. In some ways, you're taking bedding and you're sitting on the bedding. I don't think it's still not ideal, but in terms of if we're able to get around, hey, they have some way to keep warm, wet, and dry, and they can sit and lie, but the biggest thing is to establish a campground, right? Having those tents and those long-term structures to create an established campground. That's really the big thing that we're trying to prevent, is that established campground. And I think by altering that definition, I think at least for now, it seems like we'd be able to get around at least the clear language. And I know that there's still the ifs and buts of what the court does and how this would be litigated once going forward, but I feel like if we're getting around some of the clear language that seems to be have been ruled on in Johnson v. Grants Pass and some of these other districts, I think that seems like the middle ground.
I can't implement what was just described for adoption tonight. I don't understand it well enough, and I think we're not seeing all of the what would and would not be allowed anywhere in your town, because I don't know what that does to all of the other proposed amendments to 020. And I have to say, even if you repeat it to me, to say, Carrie, you're being dumb, and what we're only saying is drop all of the amendments except this tiny little change to campsite, I cannot give you legal advice tonight to say that accomplishes what 19553 requires. And I can only tell you, I think it doesn't. Not only that, I don't think it accomplishes what you want to do, but I don't know, because I need more time with you to figure out what the goal is, and then I can craft language to accomplish that, to achieve that goal.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Patty.
This is Councilor Patty. Hey, I just want to go ahead and say, it really, I like where we're going here on this, and this is interesting for sure. And I'm interested in what we can develop further on this. I really am, and I think the best place for that to happen is the Homeless Task Force, right? So for tonight, we do have a motion and an amendment on the table, right? And I think maybe this is our best option tonight to move forward and then see what this is going to look like as far as implementation is going to go and what we need to do to tweak it to improve the code. That's just my opinion at this point.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Councilor Patty. I think what we're looking at is, and the main reason why folks are here is they're objecting, number one, to the parks being the two locations that we're going to allow it. So I'm in agreement with you. Take that off the table by having those listed as you did in your amendment. And then as the process continues from the Homeless Task Force, it's going to be ongoing for a while. To come back to your part, Councilor Giglio, and really try to have the task force dive into that, come up with a language, come up with a determination on how that looks and bring it back, because it's going to come back. It's a process, it's a phase, and we're in the very early stage of being phase one. So I'd see that as to your point, Councilor Patty.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree. I think that keeping the status quo as is, like Dallas and Monmouth have done, I think that provides a lot more incentive to make sure that we are bringing the public along during the different, to present them with some of these different options. Because I don't think there's clarity, even in my mind, there hasn't been very much clarity about where these other places are. And I've seen the maps, but still getting your head around, okay, what's the suitableness of this location? And that's why I would say I would rather, I know that we can't get the right language here, but we have a 90-day, we're going to have a 90-day notice when someone is planning on suing, combined with the precedent I think set in Dallas and Monmouth that you don't need to necessarily move today on it by this timeline. I would rather say, let's not create new problems. Let's continue. I mean, the status quo is imperfect, but let's not create new problems because we don't feel like we're right where we need to be yet. I would rather say, okay, I think we have a couple places. I would like to consider the campsite definition and then the time, even just time restrictions around things. So I would prefer that we table the conversation and we say, let's keep the status quo, go back into task force, because I think this meeting in particular for me, coming out of task force, was a very, it's very clear where public sentiment's at, right? And I think it does provide a very clear statement to the task force as to what is expected going forward and what we try to get to. So while I do understand it, I think that arguments can be made on both sides. I think where I'm at is to say, let's table it, let's continue in the status quo until we're able to get some of these alternatives, knowing that Dallas and Monmouth have done that very same thing.
Okay, so just so you're clear, status quo is meaning we're not enforcing anything from this point forward.
I will say I understand that, but I do think that it's better to say, okay, my issue is to say, okay, if you have this place and this place that we're setting up now, that those will become established campgrounds that are hard to I'm concerned this is just going to make it worse than it is now, right? That there's a potential that this will make it actually worse than where we're at now. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Councilor Patty.
Yeah, I hear you on that, but tonight I'm hearing from Sergeant Meeks that our problem is that our police department doesn't have the teeth to do this, right? And so that's the problem I want to address with this motion this evening, and that's what I've heard from the public, is that they want our parks protected, and that's what I'm trying to do with this motion. And so, if there's not any further sentiment or anything that anybody wants to share, I'm going to call for the question.
We didn't come here to table it.
Councilor Ort, anything else?
I think when you call the question.
I know, but
okay.
Councilor Patty phrased it in unless there's, so the motion's been called for. Tammy, will you poll the council? First of all, let's see if we can phrase it correctly, the correct amendment in the code.
I believe that the amendment or the motion was to adopt ordinance 1063 with the amendment to amend Exhibit 1, 8.120204 to read, the following areas are considered developed parks for the purposes of this chapter: Pioneer Park, Santiam Park, North Slope Park, Quail Run Park, Henry A. Porter Dog Park, Westtown Park, Community Garden, Community Center Park, Riverfront Park, Wildlife Meadows Park, and Mill Creek Park. And then to state, it's not part of the motion, but Exhibit A will no longer be needed, and we will revise Exhibit B back to Exhibit A.
Okay, sounds good. Tammy, please poll the council.
Councilor Giglio?
No.
Councilor Patty?
Yes.
Councilor Sims?
Yes.
Councilor Ort?
No.
Mayor Quigley?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
And because that ordinance was not unanimous, it will come back again. So you all have a second opportunity to chat about it.
And can I say, so we have an interested parties list for the task force. Everybody that spoke this evening, I got your address. We will include you on the interested parties list. If other people want to be added to the interested parties list, please email me, and I will be happy to add you, and that will give you notification of upcoming task force meetings as well as materials that are associated with that.
What's your email address?
My email address is Hajduk, that's HAJDUK, at StaytonOregon.gov.
I know this is tough, and there's a lot of different ways to get from A to B. We're probably going to be discussing all of them sometime over the next week, 2 weeks, year. But I'm going to sign out for now. I know you guys have a rest of a very busy agenda. Night, guys. Thanks.
Thank you. I think I'm going to take a 5-minute recess, please. 9 o'clock. Be back at 9 o'clock. All right, we're going to reconvene the meeting. Is Councilor Ort there?
Councilor Ort, are you there?
Yes, we're going to go to number 8. Well, general business we're done, right? Yeah, I'm gonna start. So I'm gonna start with number 8 then. Is Councilor Ort there or no? Councilor Ort, are you there? Okay. Well, we'll see if she rejoins us here in a minute. So we're going to do resolution number 1064 then, correct?
Yes.
Is that this one?
The budget one. 1064, electing to receive state shared revenue funds.
And so I have to read the script, public hearing one, this one? Oregon budget law, that one? Do I have that one?
And Mayor, quickly, it looks like Councilor Ort has joined us.
Okay.
This is for the budget. This is the one you need now. So that one, and
This
that's
one?
for the next one.
Okay. All right, so that moves on to resolution number 1064, electing to receive state revenue sharing funds. And before I do that, we're going to I need to read this message. Oregon Revised Statutes 221.770 requires 2 public hearings be held to hear from citizens regarding the use of state revenue sharing funds distributed to the city of Stayton. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony on the proposed uses of the funds. Before opening the public hearing, we will receive a staff report. James?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mayor and councilors, I'm James Brand, the finance director for the city.
I'm sorry, hold on. Sorry, continue, sorry.
Okay. I just want to assure you that Stayton is in compliance with the ORS to receive the state revenue shared revenues, and we recommend that you do approve resolution number 1064. The fiscal impact of this is included in our budget for next year, 2023-24, in the amount of $872,000. Most of it is for street maintenance and $247,000 for public safety in the general fund.
Okay, and having read the statement, we're open the public hearing at this point. Okay. What? Oh, sorry. Did city staff receive any written testimony regarding the proposed uses of state revenue sharing?
No.
Did city staff receive any requests to testify virtually regarding the proposed uses of state revenue sharing?
No.
Is there anyone in the audience this evening that would like to provide testimony regarding proposed uses of state revenue sharing? Doesn't look like it. One more chance. Anybody? Crickets? Thank you. There is no public testimony, so I'm going to close the hearing and move on to council deliberation. Council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty. I'd like to move that we approve resolution number 1064 declaring the city's election to receive state revenues.
Okay, it's been moved and second to approve resolution number 1064. Any further discussion? No? Tammy, will you poll the council, please?
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Counselor Gilio?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. All right. That brings us to resolution number 1065, adopting the 23-24 city budget, making appropriations and imposing and categorizing property taxes for the fiscal year. And I need to again read this before I let Mr. Brand give us his take. Oregon budget law requires that a public hearing be held by the governing body prior to its adoption of a budget for the ensuing fiscal year. The purpose of this hearing is to receive public input and testimony concerning the budget approved by the Stayton Budget Committee. Before opening the public hearing, we will receive a staff report. James?
Yes, Mayor Quigley and the council, this is the budget for next year that's been approved by the Budget Committee. Again, this does establish a permanent tax rate of $3.328 per thousand of assessed value and approves a levy for the city's two local option taxes. One is 40 cents per $1,000 and the other is 50 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. Those are for the library and the recreation levies.
Okay.
There should be a note that there were two corrections to your original packet. One was in the fiscal impact. There was a misprint in the total fiscal impact. You received a correction, and the total city budget is $36,130,898. And the original packet was also missing the detail of 3 funds, but that was included for you later. So there wasn't a misprint, but just an omission on the original packet for that.
Okay, thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Did city staff receive any written testimony regarding the fiscal year 23-24 budget?
No.
Did city staff receive any requests to testify virtually regarding the fiscal year 23-24 budget?
No.
Is there anyone in the audience this evening who would like to provide testimony regarding the fiscal year 23-24 budget? No? Okay, closes the hearing and move on to council deliberation.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giulio.
And I just want to clarify, I think I'm a little tired. So we are on resolution 1065?
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay. Yes. I would just be, I'm just going to be stating that today I will be opposing the resolution number 1065 for 2 primary reasons. We just don't feel like there is enough money that's been allocated towards our street budget. And within the street budget, there's one allocation that I oppose strongly. And so with those two, primarily with the roundabout continuing to go through as appropriated funding within the street budget, I oppose it on that grounds. Also, even though I didn't necessarily, we didn't get to a vote on the budget committee, I also am opposing, because I think where the rest of the meeting went in the budget committee, and I was hoping to find some other money elsewhere for the streets, and because of that, we weren't able to get to those places. I'm also opposing it because of the community engagement officer that is included in this budget as a long-term fiscal part of our budget. So for those reasons, I will be opposing the budget as presented. Yeah.
So noted. Any other discussion, council? Okay, with that, Tammy, will you poll the council, please?
There hasn't been a motion to approve it yet.
Sorry, I thought there was. What would the rest of the council like to do then, given Councilor Giglio's comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Patty?
Yeah, I'm prepared to make a motion that we adopt the 2023-24 budget as presented.
Second that motion.
Okay. Now it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Okay, sounds.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, Councilor.
I asked Julia earlier today, and I know there probably wasn't enough time, but I'm going to bring this up again. We talked about it in the work session because we keep getting conflicting information on whether or not we can take general fund dollars and put them into our enterprise funds to kind of bolster those up, because in talking about our streets, one of the reasons that we keep getting told we can't deal with some of the worst roads in the city is because of the infrastructure under the roads and having to just rebuild entire roads. And we can't take all that money out of the street fund. It has to come out of stormwater and sewer as well to update those other portions. But it was stated today that we possibly could. And that kind of skews, for me, where I wanted to see money allocated in our budget, because with the money that we have in our sewer and our stormwater funds, we can't do those roads. But if we were able to pull some money into those, then the possibilities could be open to doing some of those streets. And all that to say that I'm kind of on the same line with Councilor Giglio, that we, right now are making some hard decisions even today with our utility rates. And so I wanted to see more money going into those infrastructure areas, including our streets and those funds. And we weren't able to do that, so I'm going to be a no as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Yeah, and I think, as I've been thinking through, I think this gets also to Councilor Ort's concerns that were voiced during the budget committee and have been kind of voiced throughout. I think this kind of gets to all of that, a holistic discussion. When it comes to the roundabout, which I think is $267,000 of this budget, what I would recommend, and this was the recommendation, I don't know if it was quite this clear during the budget committee, but my recommendation would be, say, let's put that on a one-year pause while we take a look at how are we going to, and spend this year looking at how are we categorizing and including public input and council input in what roads are done and how they're done. It doesn't mean that it's going to all just be from that, but finding a balance between the PCI metrics and definitely relying on that, but also involving the community in that process so that we can get some of these worser streets completed. And so I would say let's take that, let's put a pause on the funding for that for this year, and then take a look at, while we are creating a more holistic conversation around roads and what roads need to be done when. So yeah, that's the other reason I would be opposing.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Patty.
This is Councilor Patty. Thank you. I just wanted to go ahead and say thank you to the Budget Committee for taking the time to go through all this and, offer up ideas and suggestions and, honestly, frustrations with some of the things we've done and are doing. And so all these different things that are being presented tonight, it kind of seems like there were various times when the input was given and voted on throughout that committee process. And so for me, I'm sitting at this point where, I've had motions made at budget committees and they didn't go anywhere, as an individual budget committee member. And so for me, I'm going to be voting on this yes, because this was passed and approved by the budget committee. And so I respect the members who took the time to participate in that. And so my vote for yes is going to be because we all took part in that process and arrived at this document. So that's just my opinion. I just thought I'd share it.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Yes, I want to say I absolutely respect that, and I will say that I definitely, based on that, that was definitely where a lot of my consideration back and forth was. I do respect the members of that committee and think that the work that we put in on that last week was really, really robust and good. I just think that, however, ultimately, it is the council's responsibility. We're the ones elected directly by the people to approve this budget. And so even though I really value the budget committee's input, I think that at the end of the day, the final decision on the budget is, whether it's passed or rejected, is at the council level. So because of that, I'm still a no.
Councilor Ort.
I wanted to speak about the roundabout. We are in the process of getting some federal funding, or trying to get federal funding for that. And I feel like are all in agreement that in order to see that industrial area developed, that something needs to happen there. My concern, I am in favor of moving forward with that project and the funding for that. My no, I just want to make it clear that my no is for some other reasons. But I have given that roundabout project some thought about where we are with that. And my biggest concern is that we have people advocating for us, and we keep saying to, state legislators, federally, and looking for grants and whatnot, like, yes, this is something that we want to do. And it's one of those things where if, we have people who are advocating for us saying, this is what the town wants, and then we go back and say, oh no, actually they didn't. What does that look like in terms of, getting funding in the future if we decide, oh yes, we actually do want to get this project done? Are they going to be more apt to give us something when we've been so wishy-washy in the past? And so because we are specifically looking for funding right now, if that funding doesn't go through, then that could be another conversation for us to have on whether or not we want to continue with the project. But because we're in the middle of that, I want to see that continue to go through.
Okay, thanks, Councilor Ort. Mr. Sims.
There was a few things I was on the fence about also on the budget. The community engagement coordinator was one. And I know I'm kind of 50-50 on that still, but I do think my concern is getting tunnel vision and not taking care of, all the requirements that a city needs and just focusing on roads only. I think the community engagement coordinator is important. The code enforcement officer is important. The roundabout, that road is going to, at Wilco, or all the property at Wilco is going to sit there for a century if we don't improve the roads out there. And we'll never get any federal funding for this roundabout if we don't have plans in place for it. So I do think it's pretty crucial to have that, to have the plans done, the studies done for the roundabout, so we can actually get some funding for it and maybe get some businesses out there and some more jobs. So I'm for roads also, and that's one thing I think is very important. I completely agree. We need to get more roads. Councilor Giglio and I pushed another road through. We pushed another project through, but I'm just concerned about getting that tunnel vision and not looking at everything else that needs to be done for the city and just focusing on roads. I do think the budget, most of the departments are working on a pretty tight budget, and they're doing the best they can, and everything's important. But I still want to find more money for roads also, but I think where we're at with the budget, I was in agreement with it. I sat there through the meetings. You know, I am for the budget.
Thank you. I would speak to that too. I think my initial objection, well, not initial, but initially when the roundabout thing came up, I'm like, yeah, I'm not so sure based on the conditions of the roads that we have here today. And during my absence on the council previously, that's when the roundabout came to a little bit more advanced in its development. I'm still, and I think you all have heard me say, build it and we will come. I don't subscribe to that. You heard that from today from the folks in the audience from a reverse standpoint, right? My concern right now is that we've already spent almost a majority of the money in the design phase, and we do have that pending request in at the federal level. And so what would happen if that federal grant was received and we were awarded it and we don't have the continuation of the plan, the fully developed plan? I'm not willing to jeopardize that right now, especially when I think the development phase, the development cost of just the plan itself is a lot less than it should be typically. I think it was typically 10% of the actual cost of the project. I think ours is under that substantially. So that's one contributing factor that I'm in support of. We're already halfway there, almost more than halfway there, and that's why not just continue and see what happens with, especially from a funding standpoint. Yeah, that property, the industrial land's been sitting there for so long and it hasn't been touched, and there's mitigating factors to that too from a stormwater perspective, but we're working on that. That's another request we have in for funding, right? So there's a couple things in the hopper there, and I'm willing to take the chance to go with it and see what happens. As far as the community not having a voice in it, the community's had multiple opportunities to express their desires. There's open houses to talk about their plans are on the board. They could have come to the budget committee. They can come to any meeting of the council anytime they want. And it's just, that's a challenge for us as a whole, is how do we get more community involvement other than what we had tonight, right? So for those reasons, I'm going to say if it gets to a tie. And the other piece I will say is, and I want Julia to probably confirm this, and I don't want to just throw this out there wildly, but if a budget is not passed by the governing body by the time it's supposed to be, I think on the fiscal year, correct? Then the council could be held personally liable for it, and I'm not willing to do that. So for all those reasons, I'm going to go. So with that, what does the council want to do?
That I'm not really satisfied with the amount of money that we put towards the roads. I want to see us take a more aggressive approach on putting money towards our roads, and if we can, towards those services in the future. And that is what I'm going to continue to advocate for in the budget committee. And to the mayor's point, I don't know who's still in the audience, if you left before, we talked about this, but this is absolutely just as important as the conversation that we were having earlier. And we didn't have anyone at the budget committee meetings. We rarely do. We rarely have them at the council meetings. And it's only until we get to the point where you get all mad at us that you actually show up. And so we would love for you to participate because it's your money that we're spending. And so if you want to see it spent a certain way, please get involved a little bit earlier, because to the mayor's point, we have to pack the budget. So I will change my vote to a yes today.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty.
Councilor Patty.
Just one real quick adage. Councilor Orr, you made mention of potentially moving some of these funds around. And so I just want to go ahead and say I'm not super familiar with what your proposal is going to be there. I just want to go ahead and offer, why wait for Budget Committee, and we can supplementary adjust this budget at any point in time. So if there's a specific proposal that you work through and it's brought forward to us, like I am all ears. It's just at this point tonight, I feel like this needs to be moved forward for the reasons that the mayor has already alluded to, and also so that our city can operate functioning government. It's always good. And yeah, for that reason, I'll be a yes tonight.
If I may, that's one of the reasons that I haven't, if I had a more definitive answer on whether or not we could move money to those enterprise funds, then I would have some suggestions or amendments, but I don't, because I told Julia that if we can't do it, I will let it go, but if it's a possibility, and we have all the information, then that's something that I would like to do. So I will absolutely be bringing that forward for suggestions in the future if that's a possibility. So thank you.
Thank you. And Councilor, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to make sure I understand what you're asking. So we're all in a understanding here. I think what you're asking is, can we move money from the enterprise funds between each other? Or from the general fund to the enterprise funds?
General fund dollars to enterprise funds,
Gotcha.
water,
Yep.
sewer, and storm.
Right, because I know we can't take money from the water fund and use that for any other purpose. I think
We
that's
could loan it, but we can't just shift it.
okay. All right, just wanted to make sure that was clarified.
Yeah, and that's not what I want to do.
Okay,
I don't want to take money out of enterprise funds.
okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Or we do have a motion and a second, correct, or no? No, we do?
Yes.
Further discussion, Councilor Giglio? No, you're good?
Good.
Tammy, please poll the council.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Counselor Giglio?
No?
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
Okay, so not being unanimous, correct? Or do we have to worry about that?
It's a resolution.
Yep, that's a resolution, sorry, thank you. All right, that goes on to resolution number 1066, fiscal year 23-24 fee schedule, staff report with Julia.
Yes, so thank you. In your council packet, beginning on page 64, is the staff report. And I just want to point out that this is different than what council has seen in the past, where you had two separate resolutions, one with the fee schedule and one with rates. This is combined into one in what I hope to be a little bit more clear and transparent for the rates, primarily on what those changes are. On attachment 1 to your staff report, that's the track changes version. It's a little small in your packet, but I did email that out to council so that you could see it a little bit bigger. What this is showing, and I apologize, it says the proposed changes, what's deleted is shown in red strike through, that is correct, but what's proposed, it says is shown in green underline, it's actually red underline, I apologize for that. But you can see every change that's proposed from the current fee schedule and or rates. And then in the column on the right is an explanation of why those changes are proposed. They're either going to be clarity, a new charge that's proposed and explaining why, or the rate increases and the rate changes. I can go over those in greater detail if you would like, and answer any questions for you, but we recommend that you approve Resolution 1066, adopting the fee schedule.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilor Giglio.
Yeah, the primary one that I have an issue with is raising the street fee from $2 to $8 a month. And I can't find what page that's on. Just help me out here.
That is in your track changes package piece. It is page 74 of your packet. In the clean copy, it is page 86.
I don't think I even have those.
Julia, what is the page on the strike-through copy?
The page is page 74. It's 9 of 12 on of the, it's the way we page number. If you look at the right-hand upper corner, it's going to show the 74.
I was looking at that too. I would like to know from the other counselors what you would think about raising the fee like $5.50 for single-family dwelling, mobile home park, and apartment, just across the board for everyone. That would, I was kind of averaging out. So I understand what staff did in terms of percentage-wise, but instead of making single-family dwellings pay $8, and that's $4 more than mobile home and apartments, if we made it like $5.50, that would get us to the same amount, but then everybody would be paying the same.
So I would,
and then it wouldn't be increasing single-family dwellings as much. I just don't, so in my mind, I don't see the difference between a single-family dwelling and a mobile home, how they have probably about, on average, the same amount of cars and are using the streets.
and my understanding is that when this street fee was originally put in, it was based on a certain trip generation, and that's why that rate was applied. I would have concerns, especially kind of, if you remember our work session way back hours ago this evening, and the cost of service analysis, and I think it would be fair to raise it by the same percentage, but without diving into the cost of service and making sure that we're being fair, I would be concerned about just sort of arbitrarily making them all the same without knowing that we're doing it appropriately. So I guess if that is where the rest of council wanted to go to get single family down to $5.50, I would need my math brain to figure out what percentage that was, and then I would recommend applying that rate change to all the other, that percentage change across the board.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Sorry, it's hard not being there and remembering protocol. I totally hear what you're saying, Julia, and I appreciate that. I'll give you an example. When I was first running for council and door knocking, I knocked on this gentleman's door, and he lives in a single family home. He lives alone. He is kind of a homebody, he stated, and he doesn't drive a lot. And he has neighbors across the street, so he's paying the $2 fee. He has neighbors across the street, and I could visibly see that they had 5 cars in their driveway. So I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that just because you live in one type of home that you have so many cars and are going to be using the roads less or more than someone else. You could have someone on a fixed income living in a single family dwelling, and then someone, in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and then someone living in an apartment, a 3-bedroom apartment, and you have more cars. And so I don't know, I don't really feel like that's necessarily applicable when we're talking about a street fee.
Okay, anybody else?
Mr. Mayor?
Council Giglio.
Yeah, I wanted to just do a more holistic defense of my position. So really, when we break it down, $1 a month equates to about $34,000 towards the roads. And so when we're looking at things like, we're trying to compare things like, okay, a roundabout, how much was that? Well, that would have been the equivalent of about $8 street fee. All the street fee would have gone towards that. The community engagement officer is about $3 per month for that. What we successfully moved between Julia and Councilor Sims and I was $500,000 into the street fee, into the street fund, which was the equivalent of almost $15 a month for single family, $15 a month street fee. One of my arguments has been, like, what we based the budget on was we assumed a $4 street fee, which is doubling the current rate. I'm fine potentially continuing to raise that over the years, but I think that jumping from a 2 to an 8, which is a $400% increase, I think that's too much. And I really want to continue to press into finding more room within the budget, especially within the general fund, for funding of streets. As was testified in our utility rate studies, almost every municipality relies in some part on their general fund to help supplement streets. It's just, that's the way it happens. And so I'm not a big fan of adding these new, basically what we're saying is, you're paying this fee because we don't want to spend this other money towards this. There's things that are more important towards it. And I just feel like when it comes to this, I think it's a compromise. It's an increase, and it's a compromise to say, let's increase it by $2 this year, and then readdress it next year to bring it up to 6 or 8. But we had talked about this at the beginning a couple months ago, and we had talked about, and I really want this to be a holistic discussion, is to bring the community in for this street discussion and have it and continually start to involve them more in what streets are being done, how are these decisions being made, and what we can charge them for their street fee. I think it's hard to have these community discussions on street fees when we have having robust community involvement around what the street fee is, if we haven't included them into the whole street process generally. And I know that there's been claims that has been done. I just don't think it's been done very well. And I don't think that's the public's fault. I think it's our marketing's fault, which might be why a community engagement coordinator is good, or just not even marketing. I think it's just having those town hall type things like we're doing on Thursday, which I'm really excited about, to be able to have those more informal discussions about what the feel is for the town. So for that reason, I just feel like this is too much of a jump. And I would much rather say, let's take the $4 that was assumed in our budget that we just passed and apply that, instead of adding a supplemental budget this year, which is only going to add, which is not going to be enough to add another road. It's only going to add maybe $120,000 more to the budget. So for those reasons, I would say let's pause this year, reconsider it next year, and still have a $2 increase though.
So, and just a clarification, if we increased it by $2 for single family, that would be a 200% increase so across the board applying 200%. But that is what was assumed in the budget, so there wouldn't be any additional money. It would be consistent with what we assumed in the budget.
Sorry, say it again. Which was assumed in the budget?
The $4. So.
A $4 increase?
No, $2. So I assumed $4 per, yes, sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, no, 2 to 4, but 2 to 4 would be $100% increase, right?
I don't know.
It's pretty late. Yeah, I think it's doubling it. We're doubling it.
We would do that across the board, and I would have my finance director check my math, because that's probably a good idea. But that's what was assumed in the budget, so there wouldn't be additional money that would be available if you did it, if you went from 2 to 4.
Yeah, 2 to 4 wouldn't be any additional money, but that's what's assumed in the budget. Yeah, I understand that, and that's what I would say. I'd say let's work off the budget we just passed for this year, raise it to 4, which is doubling the current rate, and then continue to have this discussion as we have a holistic conversation around roads.
Okay, I know how to have a spirited discussion. I think we all did after tonight. But as far as, yeah, anyways. Councilor Patty, got anything? Councilor Sims? All right. Councilor Ort?
Mr. Mayor?
Hi.
Yeah. Hi. Julie, can you just clarify? So it would be $4 for single family dwelling, and then it would be $2 for mobile home and $2 for apartments. And then what would the assisted living be? The $2?
It would be whatever percentage increase from 2 to 4 is, and then
okay.
100% is what my finance director is telling me. So we would
Okay, so
apply 100%.
assisted living would be $1.
Yes. Sorry. I did not major in math.
All right, so did you want to make a motion for that, or are you just having a discussion, Councilor Giglio?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for that. Which would just be make a motion to amend. Sorry, what's the name of this?
To amend the proposed fee
Okay.
in Resolution 1066.
All right. Yeah, I make a motion to amend the fee schedule in Resolution 1066 to modify the street maintenance fee, lowering it from I think it's a 400%. Is that 300 or 400%? 400. Lowering it from a 400% increase across single-family, mobile home, apartment, and assisted living to adjusting that to a 100% increase across each of those dwelling units, bringing the single-family dwelling monthly fee from $8 to $4 a month.
And just a point of clarification before you get a second, that 100% would be applied not just for residential but commercial as well on the next page.
Yes.
Okay.
Where would it, sorry, which one would it be?
Page 75, the commercial and industrial street fees.
Yes. Okay. And those have a 400%?
Yes, so
increase as
everything
well?
would come down to 100% if you get a second and that is passed.
Yeah. Okay.
Does everyone understand Councilor Giglio's motion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Moved and seconded to reduce the single-family dwelling fee from $8 to $4 and the subsequent ones thereafter, correct? It's in the same percentage. Any further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is
Councilor
Councilor
Patty.
Yeah, you know, I hear this. I hear the need. I understand what you're trying to do, Councilor Giglio, and I appreciate it for the consumer of these streets. So with this, though, I know that our street fee is pretty low comparatively. The other thing, too, is I want to see more done on these roads. I want more done on these roads, right? Just like you do. I think we all share that interest, right? So this allows us to tackle more of these roads and feel like the budget is a satisfactory place where we're not going to rob Peter to pay Paul for the roads. And so I feel like I hear you. I hear your motion on this, but I think that maybe these fees need to come up a little bit more. That's just my overall opinion. I don't even know if I'm a no vote on this yet as far as that goes. I just caution you on this because I think that we need more movement on these fees to get at these roads the way we all want to on council.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Ort.
if I may, so I second this motion to just further the conversation. And I want to see if I might be able to persuade you some more on my option of making it a flat fee. And here's the reason. So we keep going back, and Lance likes to talk about the street that that I used to live on, which was someone came to public comment and said was no better than a wagon trail. Even if we raise, so that's a single family dwelling, and if we raise this from $2 to $8, that street, again, is not going to get touched in a very long time. So you just raised, they're paying $6 more at that house and their street will never get touched. No, I won't say never, but it will take a long time for that street to get touched. And in fact, you're going to have slurry seals and all the different things on probably several roads. Like they'll get done over possibly 2 times before you even reach a road like that. And that road is not even one of our worst roads. So my pitch is to make everyone pay the same amount because we're all utilizing the same roads that are going to get done more. And those are our main arteries, and those are our main roads. Everyone uses those roads. So why not have everyone pay the same amount? And that is a way to make sure that you're getting, I understand the percentage per se, but how is that fair to everyone to make a single family dwelling pay more when you're not going to mess with their street, but what you are doing is you're taking care of those other roads that they are going to be using. So I would really like to know if you guys are interested in, I would be more apt to raise it $5 if everyone else was paying $5.
Thank you. Julia, when was the first year that $2 street fee was implemented?
I'm going to look to Alyssa. 2000.
I was on the council, I should know, but
I think the street fee goes back to 2011. It might be 12, but.
Right, and we haven't changed it since then.
That's my.
That's correct.
Right. It has not been increased since then.
I remember that. I can remember the meeting. I just can't remember the date. But I remember the gentleman in the audience walked up and threw the $2 at us. Said, "This is nothing." And that was in 2011.
And I would just to Councilor Ort's comment about and again, I don't have a strong feeling on this, but I just want to say that mobile homes in a manufactured home park and apartments, they are different than single family because they're on private property that share, have sort of a private driveway system in and of themselves versus single family homes that are on a road. So I think there is a slight difference in, and there's a higher density. There's, so I don't know that, I just wanted to throw that out, but I don't have a strong feeling or sentiment one way or the other.
If I may further, the original basis for the differentiation in the street fee is that it's based on average trip generation for those different uses. And while I don't have all of this stuff memorized, a single-family home produces, on average, and there are homes with 8 people living in them, and there are homes with 1 person living in them. But on average, a single-family home produces 1 trip in the PM peak hour. Apartments produce about 0.65 trips in the peak hour. Mobile homes in a mobile home park are probably a little less than that. And so that's why there's a difference in the street fee rate. And the commercial uses are based on, in theory, are based on their peak hour traffic generation. And there's different classes of commercial uses. And it's also based on the size of the use, because that will be an indicator of their trip generation and therefore their use of the street network, not of the street that that business or house is on, but the entire street network.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. Oh, I was just going to say thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think that's what Councilor Ort's point is, the street network, and everyone in the community using the street network. But I'm not going to speak for her. So, Councilor Julia, you got your...
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with either one of those options. I think that Councilor Ort's also seems fair to me. I think that the reason I want to this proposal was put forward the way it is not to say like it's not this year that I'm worried about. It's year 6 from now. And I would like to see the holistic plan for where the streets are going in terms of their fees. We've been able to do that with water, sewer, and storm, which gives us a really holistic look at what in totality someone's utility bill is going to be in 5-6 years from now. And I don't think we see that with this. And the second thing I would say is we are having a little bit of a greater increase on those other aspects of the bill for the average single-family dwelling. They're going to be at 6.2% increase across the board this year, except for the 40% increase on stormwater. So this increase, but then it goes down for most of the single families moving forward. So this increase is relatively significant. It's a 400%. It's a $6 jump. I think this type of a raise might be a lot better. Taken better next year when these other things aren't going up as much. If we just take 1 year pause on it, then you can say, okay, well, we're only raising water and sewer by 3%, 2%. So we are going to take a little bit of a more aggressive approach at streets. So I think that makes sense to say, let's do $2 this year, and then take a look at, okay, now we know in totality utility bills going up a little bit slower, so we might be able to then incentivize more investment into streets at that point. So I'm not saying I'm a no forever. I just want to be able to have a holistic look at what someone's total utility is going to be in 5 years.
Okay. All right, so there was a motion and there was a second, and we had discussion. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Tammy, will you poll the council on that particular motion, please?
Counselor Giglio?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
No.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries
3-1.
3-1, and that will be changing it down to $2?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Changing it additional $2 to $4.
Yeah, basically,
Correct.
we will be increasing the street fee by 100%, so we'll do that across the board.
Okay. Is there anything else as far as the actual fees go?
I'm sorry, Julia, can you, for clarification, what is on here for the increase? Is that the option B that we talked about in the work session?
No, what we talked about in the work session is for next year and beyond, as opposed to this upcoming fiscal year. So it's consistent with what we talked about, but what you talked about with the different options was next fiscal year, not this coming up fiscal year. Does that make sense?
That does, but then I need to look at it again.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so it's going up by is it going up by 6.25% this year?
Yes.
And then it adjusts
Okay.
based on the type
Yes.
the following years?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. So that is what we saw
Yes,
in the
right?
schedule? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we saw that schedule, yeah.
Okay, then I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, is that it for the fee schedule? Or you guys have anything else?
So we need a motion.
Yep, if there's nothing else, I'd like to have a motion for ordinance or resolution 1066.
Yes, as amended.
As amended. Sorry, go ahead, Councilor.
I would like to move to adopt resolution number 1066 as amended, adopting fees and charges for various city services. Oh, wait, okay, let me start over. I move to adopt resolution number 1066, adopting fees and charges for various city services as amended.
Okay,
Second?
it's been moved and seconded to adopt resolution number 1066, fiscal year 23-24 fee schedule as amended. Further discussion? All those in, Tammy, please poll the council.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
No.
Counselor Julio?
Yes?
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-1.
Thank you. That leaves us with resolution number 1067, budget appropriation transfers for the 22-23 fiscal year. Staff report.
Mayor Quigley and council, this is the budget changes for this current year ending in June 30th. There were 4 appropriations that we are asking you to approve, shifting money from contingency up to the operational funds. Overall, it does not add any additional appropriations. The first is the administration general fund, and it was discovered that we received a state grant for the fire district, and it was passed through our budget, so we didn't have that budgeted when the budget was created. That was $69,000. In addition to that, we had some higher than anticipated costs for consultants to cover vacant positions throughout the year. So we're asking a transfer from contingency to materials and services of $100,000. Then in the library fund, something somewhat similar with the ARPA funds that were carried forward into this fiscal year and then spent this year. That was not anticipated when the budget was created. Also, there was damage with the fire suppression systems when some pipes burst, so we just need $10,000 from contingency up to materials and services. And then in wastewater and stormwater, just some small dollar amounts needing to cover the debt service requirements that was not budgeted appropriately at the beginning of the year. We recommend approving Resolution 1067.
Okay. With that, it's an opportunity for public comment. I hear none. Council discussion? Councilor Ort?
I want to make a motion to approve resolution number 1067, transferring budget appropriations for fiscal year 2022-23.
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty. I second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve resolution number 1067, budget appropriation transfers for the 22-23 fiscal year. Further discussion? Tammy, one more time, please.
Counselor Julio?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Counselor Sims?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Communication from city staff?
I think we're good. Oh, no, I'm sorry, we're not good. It is Dan's last meeting in front of you. I know. He is officially here through the early August, but he will be on vacation beginning about the 15th of July, and your next meeting isn't until the 17th of July. So, farewell.
Wow.
And we will, we will be planning something. He has agreed to allow us to plan something, but I do not have any details of that plan as of yet. So, more to come on that.
Thank you. Julie, do you have any updates? Councilor Ort, go ahead.
I said you're planning something for the planner.
We should make the planner plan his own plan.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm kidding.
Well, since it's your last meeting, Dan, I want to tell you personally from my standpoint, thank you for all you've done over the last time. How many years? I don't even know how many years it's been. So, there you go. But I appreciate your service to the community, and I appreciate you always trying to lead to understanding more, put it that way. So thank you. Julia, is there anything about, someone mentioned something about Thursday night somewhere?
Yes, that could be under your guys'
I'll let you take it.
Thursday night at Snow Peak Brewery, council is having I believe just a town hall meeting where you are making yourselves available to talk to people from 6 to
I think it's 6 to 9, something like that.
And we have noticed that as not a meeting. We have noticed it as a potential quorum of council. So,
Awesome, thank
yeah.
you. Anything from council, communication-wise?
I'll be there just a little late. I got a teen center
No problem.
commitment until possibly 7, but I'll be there as soon as I'm done
Thank
there.
you. Councilor Ort?
I may have a work commitment for that, so I might be a little bit late as well. But I just wanted to say that tonight was probably one of our longest meetings of the year, besides budget committee. And I just wanted to say that I really appreciate working with all of you, and that we can have discussions and disagree and still come out of it, out of the council, but, you know, respecting each other. And so I just want to say that I really appreciate and respect all of you and your opinions. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. That leaves me, and I just, you know, I think to Councilor Ort's point, yes, it was a long meeting tonight. I think it was productive, and I just want the community to know this wasn't something that we chose upon ourselves. This was something that was forced upon us, quite frankly, by the legislature and by the legislature, and I'll leave it at that. It's very broad for a reason, and it's open to interpretation for a reason, because they imposed the ordinance, which became a statute on us, without defining it. And so what are you supposed to do? And then we're in the position we're in today because of that. And it's always been, it was always going to be a process, right? And that's why we have the Homeless Task Force, and the Homeless Task Force needs to be commended for what the job they did and stepping forward to tackle the topic, because we knew it was going to be a challenge. So I really appreciate the job those folks did, and it's not easy for them as well. And hopefully this will be a continuing discussion with all the folks that were here tonight. Hopefully they'll be in attendance now going forward to the Homeless Task Force and really try to get us some teeth in this deal, because it's not easy at the end of the day. And no matter what we do, someone told me, put it this way, you guys are in a really crappy position. And that's absolutely right. There's no winners and there's no losers here. We're trying to do the best we can based on the information we have before us. And it's going to be a process, and it was just the first step in a midway step in the process tonight. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Gilliam.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate those same points. I think that this is a incredibly difficult task, and it is absolutely, like, I think that everyone has almost entire agreement on what the outcome is, what our desired outcomes are. I think there's just disagreement on what's the best solution on how to get there, and they're really just slightly different. And it's not even, I think, yeah, it's our hands are tied, and it's not up to us. And I just want to say I respect everyone else up here and the incredible work that they've done and the work that the task force has done. And I do want to encourage you, Julia, when is the next task force meeting for homelessness?
July 10th.
Yeah, so July 10th is the next homelessness task force meeting. I do want to encourage you all to come. For public involvement during that time, there's actually a little bit more freedom of back and forth with the task force members and some of that as well. So I want to encourage you guys, everyone, to come to that as well as future council meetings.
Okay. And then anything else?
Mayor, one more thing.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about this for a while, and so we have been talking about trying to get more community engagement when it comes to, like, to Councilor Julio's point with the streets and whatnot. And can we make a task force, or can the plan, would it be appropriate for, like, the planning commission to take it on? Or do we need to start a new task force for, like, a roads committee that can kind of, like, that is, I don't know, just a way to get more community engagement on, like, what they would like to see within the bounds of what Lance has, like, not, and for educational purposes too, for the community. Can we do that?
I don't see why the council
you all are
couldn't-
interested.
Yeah, I don't see why the council couldn't direct that as an option and see how successful and/or not successful we are getting people.
Is anyone else interested in doing that? I mean, I know it's hard for us to get engagement anyway, but is anyone interested in trying?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilor Patty. Yeah, I'd be interested in doing something like that and even helping serve on something, a body such as that, to foster some public engagement throughout this process and just increase transparency on how roads are decided in this community and what factors are at play. Because even as a councilor, sometimes that's unclear to us, and so it's very helpful that Lance has been able to share all the information that he has, and I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, maybe some increased public engagement would come from this, and I'm all in favor of that.
Councilor Giulio.
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I would also be in favor of something like that. Yeah, I think something along those lines could be worth pursuing for sure. So, yeah.
All right, so your community engagement person needs to get their
First assignment.
They have a lot of assignments already, but we will, yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Sims.
I am also in favor of that. I think it would be good to be more transparent and get as much of this information out to the public as we can, so definitely in favor of that.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, then I'm going to call it a night.
One last thing,
Okay, of course.
Mr. Mayor, I promise. This comes Patty. I just wanted to say, this takes a lot of courage and bravery to sit up here in these seats and take public ire, as we've done tonight. And I just want to thank you all for participating in this process and being able to arrive at a good decision that I feel like everybody had a hand in the process on. So thank you, guys.
Okay, with that, Tammy, will you poll the council if they want to go home?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.